Hi, Aparna. Anuja, hi. Hey, Shilpa. Welcome. Hi, Bristi. Hey, Vaishnavi. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm just sending you a request to join this room, Shilpa. Hi, Rutu. Hello, hello. Shilpa, did you get my request to join? Okay. Hey, Bristi, I'm doing well. I'm supposed to call you. I haven't forgotten. Shilpa, did you get my message? Okay, Shilpa, I sent you a message again. Hey, Vidya. Shilpa is unable to join. Oh. Is it the same problem that we had with Misma, which is updating your Instagram? Hi, hi. Shilpa, do send me. Okay. Sent you another request. Sorry, folks. Just give us a moment, please. I think Shilpa is going to be joining now. Ha!
Hi.
I mean, Instagram always has to just like test and do a little bit of that, and then is like, hi, welcome, Shilpa.
Thanks, Alka. Thank you so much.
Okay. For everybody who's joined, thank you so much. We're really looking forward to this conversation. Actually, the context of how this conversation came to be is that Shilpa and I were chatting last week on something completely different, and I was just really so fascinated with the way she just kept breaking into a song and all the things that she told me, which we're all going to be discussing. But most importantly, the reason for this conversation is really to invite someone who works so closely with folk tradition and culture, and to in some sense inform and educate us, so we urbanites are just a little more informed when we just use words like folk, and when we say that we're preserving and nurturing folk culture. So we're just a little more conscious of it. So that's really the context of this conversation. I'm going to quickly introduce Shilpa. She sent me a short bio, so I won't take too much time. Shilpa Mudbi Kotakota is a first generation urbanite who identifies herself strongly to her ancestral roots. She has spent several years working in the hinterlands of Karnataka, documenting agrarian lifestyles and cultural politics as a filmmaker. She's been in the field of social justice as an activist and media consultant. Her artistic research is motivated by the search for counter narratives conscious of class and caste dynamics. Her main study is the human voice, which she uses as a lens to understand and fight hierarchies in society. She's the creative artist behind the Urban Folk Project, a collective that looks at collating and curating folk knowledge systems. Shilpa is currently a member of the Janapada Academy of Karnataka State Government, representing Bidar, the northernmost district of Karnataka. And she's recently moved to Gulbarga to further her research in folk music forms of that region. So, Shilpa, welcome. I'm going to firstly start off by asking you, I just tried to do like a little research today on like, what would be my first question and stuff. So when I casually just Googled folk, it said the Webster dictionary defines folk as relating to the traditional art or culture of a community or nation. As simple and straightforward as that. Would you agree with this definition as somebody who has literally been there, engaged with the folk community? So I just want you to kind of start off with that, and then I want to ask you to sing a song. But yeah.
Well, that's I haven't actually ever checked up the folk definition online, but in a way, I think it could be right. But I'm not quite sure if folk can actually represent an entire nation because it is so micro, not so much macro. Every community, every caste from say a Madiga caste in Canada, which means people who treat leather, the same caste in different regions of this country practice their art very differently. So yes, there might be some elements which will link to leather, which hence links to the community, but it might not seem similar at all to the to the person who does not understand this relationship between that community and the metaphors or the symbols that are being used in the ritual, right?
Right.
So yes, it does represent within folk. When you look at every song, every story, it represents the caste identity or the community identity of that, within that myth. So if that myth is being appropriated, is being accepted by a certain community, the community kind of inserts its own identity and its own fears and its own collective closures that it needs from around it. So it's very personal. At the same time, it is collectively agreed upon. You know,
Right.
if you're not a practitioner and if you're not really closely connected to the community, you don't have much play in figuring out what to do, what to learn, where to go. But if you
Right.
are with the community, it comes as a right. It comes generationally. It comes by going to your neighbor's house and singing every day, or picking up the art form of telling a particular harikatha by listening to those harikathas every once in a while. Someone far removed, like you or me, who are in the urban space, who are wondering what is it that connects me to my community, sometimes draws a blank. you
Yeah.
know what is
Yeah.
it that connects me apart from that Venkateshwara that we all go to as a family? Once in a while we do Tirupati trips. Okay, there is some god, some ritual, some Dasara get-togethers that make you think, okay, this is my culture. But have we looked actually deeply into that culture? What we mean, by our folk culture? What is it representing? What are we giving to the god? Is it vegetables? Is it a beheaded chicken, or is it what is it? You know.
Right. Right.
And when you look deeper into it, I guess it defines who we are and where we stand in community.
Right.
Yes, of course, the way societies are structured, it's very hierarchical. But when you look at the functionality within folk, it seems circular. It
Yeah.
seems radiating from in between to further away, and in the margin something else is happening, in the middle something else is happening, but it's not unconnected. Say for example, like an Ur Habba, yeah, in a village deity, he or she, whoever the village deity is, represents the entire village, every religion, every
Yeah.
caste.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in
Yeah.
that sense, that god is standing as a representation of that Uru, that region, or
Region.
that,
Yeah.
and that is those are few and far between actually these days. Things that
Right.
bring us together and we
Collective. Yeah.
collectively. Now someone will go off setting up his own Ganesha, and the other one will want their own Ganesha. And during
Yeah.
during Mohram in this region, Mohram is like an Ur Habba. It's a village thing. It's not necessarily a
Yeah.
Hindu thing, it's a Muslim thing.
Yeah.
So when you have this new age radical ideas flowing within the Islamic world and in the Hindu world, now there are fewer people accepting Mohram as an Ur Habba,
Yeah.
as a village celebration.
Yeah.
So communities have very less memory actually. We tend
Correct.
to move that grammar around, move what we're doing around quite often.
Yeah.
But then if someone else from the outside comes and practices it, you'll be like, do you really have the right to do so? How did you earn
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sure.
every art form has a right to passage, yeah, and how and why you learn it. And I guess
Yeah.
it's just harder if you're not if you don't have that string that connects you to the art form, then to the community, and then your own identity. Otherwise it's like practicing ballet. I have no connection to Russian ballet, but over time, because there is a tutor who has landed up here,
Yeah.
I'm going to learn, just like learning a guitar,
Yeah.
kind of separate from me.
Yeah.
And I'm learning it as a skill. So,
Right. Right. I mean, that's so interesting. You talked about you used this word search, Shilpa. I'm going to ask you, when did you start actually that trigger when you wanted to start searching? and
Yeah.
actually really, not be us, right? We're just like not doing anything about it. So I just want to know, like, when did that trigger happen and you decided that this is what you want to do?
I'm not really sure if there was one trigger.
Yeah.
I think it's, I felt somewhere, I think when I went to Pondicherry, I was the manager of a theatre. I was very happy managing a theatre of a Franco Tamil director. He was doing something very interesting with his work. He was bringing in folk forms of Tamil Nadu, like Koothupatre, Terukuthu, into the play, using it within the narrative, helping, with the stenography or the dramaturgy of a play. He used to use these folk concepts. And that really fascinated me. And in that process, at some point, when they were doing this play about the Sri Lankan War, we had Sinhalese and Tamilians, and we had also Indians who jumped into the war. There's death all around, and he wanted to create a space within the play where there is a deity, like a female deity, who's at that shore when you die and your souls wash up on this land. She comforts you. So, what deity was it going to be? So, I grew up watching Renuka Yalama's plays in Mudbi, and hence, for me, she was the only deity who was kick-ass enough to take on the role. So I kind of started devising within the play about Sri Lanka, about this Renuka Yellama's play. So it was interesting in the beginning, and I really liked what Kumaran was doing to it and how we were addressing it as a contemporary theatre group. We were, taking Renuka into the fold of the play. And after some time, I started to feel I'm representing a piece of the story that I have watched as an audience, not even as an artist who's researching about this. So I need to go and do more work. Just watch more Yallamanatas or learn more songs, or I need to have more material to be able to devise any further.
Yeah.
I told Kumaran I would go and start my research and figure out where Yalama comes from, or where is her root here in Karnataka, and what does that mean for the communities around. And because there are transgender people who are associated to her, they have Devdasi. So it's a very colorful, labeled as a cult quite often, but it's diverse sort of following that she has. So I was fascinated with the idea. I started traveling. I never went back to Indian Ostrom because it just became something else. I started looking at the music. I was documenting it, mostly filming it, because I come from a filmmaking background.
Correct.
So we were filming it, and we were happy with filming it, and we were using words like they're rare, endangered art forms, and
I know, yeah. We all do, yeah.
we used to use this label, but quite often when you used to sit and watch Yalamanata within the village, you realized we had our own definition of what popular is. If you can see it within the urban space, if the artist is making money, if the proscenium space is kind, they get programmed often, they travel abroad every once in a while, then yes, okay, that
they are popular.
Even though they're folk, they've made it. So, and that's the same thing that we were trying to tell the artists, that, oh, you should do a show in Bangalore. You should probably travel to Chennai. In Pondi, people love this music, so you should totally come to Pondi. And that's good. I mean, it's good if exposure, if they want to do it. But quite often, I think we start defining success for a musician from a folk space, just like we do artists within the commercial industries here, be it music or film or theatre.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think is what the damage that we are creating. So slowly, when we started engaging with more artists and seeing the lifestyles that they led, and you're thinking, okay, they're buskers, they busk, and in the name of Yalama, there's a concept, they live this religion. It's not an art form that they have picked up and they practice like we practice any, jazz or R&B or, so then they're not far removed from their art form. For that matter, life itself is not far removed from art for them.
Absolutely, yeah.
That economics of it, the audience, it's all in one gambit, and they're living within this space, And so I think our approach changed. I think it's this one instance, we went to Radhabai, one of our teachers. This lady is amazing with the Chaudhki. She'll tell you, Zakir Hussain yen bharastano na Chaudhki na bharas torstin. Like, you show me what Zakir Hussain can play,
I'll play it.
Chaudhki na show you. She's killer attitude because she's so good. So we went like literally knocking at her door a couple of times, and there was this video of her. She's sitting and teaching me, and I'm playing a little bit on the shruti, some tung tung I'm doing, and she's being very encouraging and she's very sweet, and she says, "Oh, very nice, you learn, very good." So obviously I had to be a show off. So I took that video that my husband took and I put it up online, and I did not tell her. I put it up online and then she's seen it. Okay, someone has shown it to her and she's seen it. And I was like, even if she sees it, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that video. It's completely fine, right? Next time we tried to go to her house, she was not taking our calls and I was starting to get very worried. And when we turned up and she kind of unwillingly said, okay, fine, you can stay the night, eat and go. Just usually people are in the village. They will, even if they're upset with you, they'll feed you.
Yeah.
So far you feed. I'll feed you. But no, I don't think I really want to continue this conversation. So when I started digging a little more, she turned around and she said, she opened my WhatsApp. I mean, she has WhatsApp. So she opened WhatsApp and she's like, have you seen your profile picture? You have makeup on and you're sitting with earrings and all of that. And see how you've shown me on your page, she said. I hadn't even combed my hair that morning and you showed me this way. And she was very upset and I'm like, I'm really, really sorry. I shouldn't have done that and I will remove it and all of that. I felt so terrible. And then I think she was upset. So she turned around and she said, quite often you say that you're going to give us space and you're going to make this popular. You or I are nobody to preserve an art form.
Do it. Yeah.
Practice, practice it and this whole savior syndrome of yours kind of will go away. She said.
Savior syndrome. Yeah.
That's that's mainly what happened, Akhila. I feel generally, I think once we met practitioners and what their outlook towards their art form was, it was not important for them to be on some archive. It was not important that you made a documentary. I mean, they would love it if you gave them a copy of the documentary and put it on in their DVDs, DVD at home, and they'll call their family and they'll show you. But it's not what they're looking for, actually.
Yeah.
Quite often they want to be treated as equals, which our government or shows in this country are not doing. We tend to exoticize them. We put them in parades. We don't even call out what community they come from and why we do these forms, and do not connect that art form to that livelihood, to their lives and livelihood. That I think we can change that. We can change that every time we look at an art form, to be able to understand more through that art form, more about the community, more about those set of artists and their lifestyle and what it means to live that lifestyle. For a person who is a Jogati, every morning she gets up and she wears a tali, she wears, gajra and long, they'll leave their hair open and they'll deck themselves up and they'll go and busk, And we as women, I think we take that femininity for granted. I turned up in her house one day and we were in Manjama's, our teacher's house, and she took my chaudiki. She's like, no, ninna plain ada bowl ada nin chaudiki. That means just like you, it's such a plain chaudiki. Like, just like you, there's no bells on it, no sari on it, nothing. It's just like you only. So it was kind of a taunt. And then after a few drinks that they had, they were like, she is so arrogant. She's got everything. She's got a body, and then she still wears these NGO kurta type things. It just makes you think so much about how we dress and what are the decisions we've made about how we're going to depict ourselves to the rest of the world. And their life is performance. Every morning she hones that woman's body and she walks with pride, and that's much more than any actor can do on stage.
No, absolutely. Like literally, like living that life, right?
Exactly.
Breathing that life, right?
In this region, had a baby, they will give it in the hands of a Jogati first. Yeah. Because motherhood is that much more vibrant. It's that much more evident. It is that much more there for them to give. If you go to Manjama's house, it's like a daycare center. She has everyone's kids because now there is lockdown and another kids have anything to do. So they're literally in her house. She'll comb them, feed them, send them back. It's a really
lovely
household. Really.
Yeah. And I want to ask you a little bit about, from the time you started the Urban Folk Project,
Yeah.
And by virtue of actually spending quality time living with these people, right? And actually, eating in their homes, spending nights in their homes, and all of that. Um, what have been the key? You probably started off with a certain perception, and then there are findings, and that we also sort of uh, learn, mature, correct ourselves that this is not the right. We all are probably like those lived in experiences. What
Yeah.
have they done to you, and what have been some of those key takeaways for you?
There's been a lot of small things that have happened. I think a lot has to do with gender and sexuality.
Yeah.
I think my Renuka's story also just kind of kicks up so much of why we have to reassert or reclaim this goddess is because she represents so much of the life in the margins, and
Right.
that becomes evident when you go to a temple and you see how that temple is treated. That's the first thing that you notice. I was listening to the song, I was hanging around in my village listening to Yalamanata, and the village surroundings are not extremely spick and span or anything, but it's a village, so it's generally maintained on a daily basis because everyone's courtyards are cleaned by them. But the temple looks quite scary. It has not been cleaned for ages. There is no government intervention, and even if there is, it's been made to look like a jail. Like there are a lot of partitions, and the market has been spread out in such a way that it has usurped the houses of the Devadasis that used to live around this temple. As a child, when I remember going to this temple, you got down into the valley. The temple is right in the bottom, and around those hills, right, you would see Devadasis. So puja would be happening there, prostitution would be happening right next door. It was really strange because young girls they'd be getting married to the god, and they're being initiated into this process, and you could see everything. As children, we didn't really register it. As I grew up, I think most of that has been pushed into the margin of the temple, so it doesn't happen in the temple anymore because there are cops, and there is like
Okay.
police vans standing there. There's always mama in the temple for some reason, because you need to be watched by the mamas.
Yeah.
If you're going to the temples, so there's a completely different vibe to it. So I actually, though I wanted to do more research about the rituals and be around the temples and figure out what the priests do, what is their role, how does the initiation happen, all of that was very hushed. It was so hushed up that if we brought it up, people would run from us. Now this is one, because there's been a lot of media that has gone over time and tried to do an expose of what happens, and there are also NGOs that have gone in trying to culture these women, asking them not to have their hair in dreads and not to walk around with that koda, and get a job, and so they're also tired of that. Right, you can sense that, oh my god, these NGO kind of people have turned up. Now they're going to catch us, and they're either going to make us stitch quilts for the next 20 days, or they're going to give us a bath. So I realized just being us and not knowing enough about that culture and trying to find out by just observing, some things didn't work out. So I realized I think we have to work through the artists, find the people who sing with them, make a connection, and then you start having the conversation, and they'll tell you what happened before, how it was initiated. Then the rituals, even though we never conducted them, we started realizing what the rituals were, and depending on how they would be conducted, the ladies would tell us, the jyotis would tell us, and you'd be like, okay, so this is an agrarian ritual, because it starts with onions and brinjals. Yeah, that's one of the things that you give that god. And hittu, that is flour, wheat flour or jowar flour. So, so the more basic there is a word for it, right? The offering to the god, naivedya kododu.
Naivedyam, yeah.
So depending on what your naivedyam is, no, is it karjikai, is it bondas, is it kadbu? Think of the mechanism, and when these foods came about, they will tell you a lot about how old this god is. And this god has flour, onions, and brinjal, which grows in this region of North Karnataka. So what the farmers grow, they give to this
They offer. Yeah.
So it's not just a Devadasi and Jogati thing. She is one of those early female goddesses of this Deccan region who are all connected to fertility, who are all connected to harvest in one way or the other.
Right.
So when you start looking at the rituals, I think what changed for us is we were looking at collection of, let's collect these songs.
Right.
Let's collect these rituals. Let's collect. I mean, that
Correct.
was the idea. Yeah, we're collectors, so we wanted to collect. But then slowly, I think it became about let's practice. Let's practice what they practice. We might not be able to go and busk around, but let's learn these songs and let's speak about their lives and let's kind of curate their stories through these songs. So over time, it became more about not just the songs but their lives. So collection stopped and just living started. Like, let's go hang out with Ramaka. Let's ask Ramaka to come and live with us for 2 days. And some funny things happen, of course. Like, Ramaka came home. We don't have a puja room at home. Since we've been married at least for 10 years, we don't have any juggly, no God, no Deepa, nothing. So Ramaka she has become, there are a lot of Muslim Jogtis also to Renuka. So as soon as it becomes in the evening, she'll be like, Salam alaikum Shilpa, Salam alaikum Shilpa. And in the morning, she'll be like, Renuka Yalama, Renuka Yalama. So though we found it confusing as to what was happening there and how they were calling out two different, saying prayers to two different gods, she didn't feel like she had to hold back. She turned around and she's like, you're like Christian, no?
Because there was.
Yeah, just like nothing. She said, let's go to the temple and sing. The temple's close by. I said, yeah, but that is Hanuman temple. Like, why should we go to Hanuman temple? We'll go to a Renuka temple. She's like, no, it doesn't matter. Whichever temple, come, we'll go to the temple. Because she looked around, like, if there is any place in the house. Jogatis have houses where the puja room is quite big, or it has access to like a portico where a lot of people can collect.
Okay.
Front of their puja rooms. So the lack of puja room like completely confused her. So she turned around like, "Nee Christian idala Shilpa," and I'm like, no. Actually, I was very uncomfortable answering that because when you grow up in a convent and you've said the Our Father every day for 10 years, how can you turn around and say you're actually not Christian? Like, what? There is a part of you. I've grown up.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, doing Christmases in Catholic club and having wine and bread on certain days. You just feel like you can't. I felt more uncomfortable saying we're not Christian actually, rather than saying actually we are Hindu but we don't follow. But then she'll say things like, it doesn't matter, whatever you are, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter to her what religion you are. She sings through you, so it's all good. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
Wow. Yeah.
So that is they see it and the way we see it, and that's been the constant discovery, I think. Like one day, we were sitting in the park and I had the Shruti with me. A lot of other friends had come together. Some students had come. They were sitting and playing the Chaudki. And some women came. We understood where they came from later, but they were from North Karnataka. They seemed like fairly, poor women with not very good chappals. They were just walking around in the park and they found us so fascinating because we were holding instruments that they see every day that buskers hold in their region. And we were wearing our shoes and we are in our tracks. We just went for our job, came back, we're holding these instruments and we're singing. And these ladies are like, what is up with these girls? Like, why are these... So we thought, okay, we've got local audience, like they really know how this sounds. So we wanted to put like a good show. So we kept singing and next song, and they're watching, let's keep going, And they were impressed. And so we went and struck a conversation. They said, for the past 3 days, the Anganwadi workers in Karnataka were on a strike. So they were sleeping in front of Vidhan Sauda. They were sleeping on the pavement for 3 days. And this was the third day and they heard us going ting ting in the park. And they're like, wait, we know that sound. And Vidhan Sauda is right behind Cubbon Park. That's where my classes used to happen. So they came. And they heard us. And then we were like, okay, let's get you some tea. After we heard why they had come to Bangalore, we felt bad, of course. So we were like, let's all go for tea. And we'll all have tea and samosa and everything. And then y'all can go back to your post. Yeah. And they said, bhadri, hanga, bhadri. They were appalled that we even suggested it. They're like, y'all sang Yellamma songs. We should be giving you money. So they put their hands in their blouses and they dug out like 10 rupees, and they're like, here, and they grab my instrument and they put it, there's still money in it. There's always money in this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they put it in and they're like, no, we can't take from you. We should give you. Now that we've seen the Chaudaki, we can't leave from here without putting money in it. So they put money in it.
Put money.
And we were just like, we were not busking, but what do we do with this money?
Yeah.
You know, and they said, Moor dina agyadri, 3 days we've been here and nobody's listening to us. Today you made sure Yallamma came and heard us out, they said. Wow. And for us, it's just research. It's at least at that point it was a piece of research. I was working on it as an actor's body. I wanted to get used to these two instruments. But it's a belief system. It's hope. You know, it's life. And so when they turned up and they treated us that way, it really shook a lot of things within us. We're like, yeah, I mean, it really is in the approach and how we are brought up and what our belief systems make us do and how we channelize our energies through it, you know.
Right.
And so I think I started taking her more seriously, even though I used to proudly call myself an atheist. After a point, I've started realizing that no, I think more than calling myself an atheist, I have started to realize there is a very spiritual part that's brewing through this music. It's making me connect with all sorts of people, and it's made me feel like there's a sense of community around me just because I picked up this project, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
How people just changed, and I think that is something that she's given me. It's like a gift. Even though she might not land up on my puja room, she's in my shruti and she's in my heart. You know, she'll continue to have a dialogue. It's a very different dialogue than my teachers are having with her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like the things that I say through Renuka. Like I did a protest for CAA and I wanted Renuka Yellamma to be a part of that protest. We are water people. We're Dravidian people. We come from culture of water. And there is a fire culture. And that is, if both these cultures came together, we are a united India. You know. So with that idea, we thought the Jogatis could play with the water. And we had an artist who knew Bhavai, Avril. So she came about with the fire pot. But when I told Manjama, I need barbeku, need the hardbeku, you should come and you should be a part of it. She was like, no, you take the girls. Yeah, you go ahead. You do your experiment. But I'm not really sure I want to join you. You know?
Okay.
And I realize sometimes you're drawing from a space, it's giving you so much, it's nurturing you, it's helping you politicize your voice. Even though the work you're drawing from is not political. And our practitioners might not feel the same way as you do. But they're with you. There is that camaraderie that, yeah, you've learned from me, I'm with you. Okay? But that's about it.
Yeah. Shilpa, I want to ask you a little bit about the music itself.
Right.
You know, what is that process of, one is of course living with them and therefore it has added a layer of meaning and, you know, a layer of experience to the whole music. But the music itself, Shilpa, what has that been like and what is your relationship with that?
I started to realize, okay, I'll sing you something and I'll tell you. This is a song. It's called Sharada Devi.
Okay.
And this form is called Gigi Pada. Gigi Pada is like Kawali.
Oh, okay.
It's Kalgi Tura. Kalgi is like Kali. It's for the woman, and Tura is for the man. So there are different schools. Different people practice in different schools. It's the for women school and the for man school. So different villages send different teams, and they come together and battle it out. It's a battle about gender. So if you're singing for the guys and I'm singing for the girl, I will say Sharada Devi is this, Sharada Devi has done that, she's amazing like this, she kicked someone's butt like this. And then you'll be like, no, but Vishnu is like this, or Venkateshwara is like this. Okay,
it's like our school culturals, yeah.
Yeah. I usually say, like, you know, those WWF cards, we used to play trump cards. Yeah, you're playing your gods, basically. So it goes like this. Hariya. Sharada Devi Adishakti, Sharada Devi Adishakti, Sharada Devi Adishakti. Sharada Devi Adishakti, Sharada Devi Adishakti, Sharada Devi Adishakti. ಏ ಘಲ್ಲು ಘುಲ್ಲು ಘಲ್ಲು ಘುಲ್ಲು ಗೆಜ್ಜಿಯ ನುಡಿಸುತ್ತ ಬಂದಾಳ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ಅಗಿಯಗ ಆಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯ ಏ ಘಲ್ಲು ಘುಲ್ಲು ಘಲ್ಲು ಘುಲ್ಲು ಗೆಜ್ಜಿಯ ನುಡಿಸುತ್ತ ಬಂದಾಳ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ಅಗಿಯಗ ಗಾಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯ. So there is a Sharada Devi here. She is not sitting on a pedestal. She is not being demure about anything. She has fire in her. She's coming ghal ghul ghal ghul ghal ghul. She's jumping around.
Galgul.
ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ, ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ, ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ. You are in the darkness and the formlessness. You are everywhere. ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ, ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ, ಅಂಧಕಾರ ಧುಂಧಕಾರದಾಗಿರತಿ. ಏ ನಿನ್ನ ಯುಧದೋಳು ಜನಸಿ ಬಂದ ದೀಪಾಲದ ಮೂರುತಿಯಗಿಯಗ ಆಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯ. People who have come in your name are light, are the epitome of light, just like you are. They are an extension of you. ಶೇಖವೈ ತುಂಗಾ ಒಲಿಯುವ ಶಕ್ತಿ, ಶೇಖವೈ ದುರ್ಗಾ ಒಲಿಯುವ ಶಕ್ತಿ, ಶೇಖವೈ ತುಂಗಾ ಒಲಿಯುವ ಶಕ್ತಿ. Even the sheikh who turned up in this region, he did salam to you. He walked on the banks of Tungabhadra, which is the river here. So even he acknowledges you. ನಿನ್ನ ಗುಣಶ ಖಾಯ ಮಾಡುತ್ತ ಹಾದ್ಯವ ಸಾರಥಿ ಅಗಿಯಗ ಗಾಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯಾ. ಹೇ ನಿನ್ನ ಗುಣಶ ಕಾಯ ಮಾಡುತ್ತ ಹಾದ್ಯವ ಸಾರಥಿ ಅಗಿಯಗ ಆಗಿಯಗ ಗಿಯಾ. ಹಾ ಹಾ ಹಾ. The last one basically means everyone who knows your guna,
Yeah.
They will watch out for you. They'll watch and ward for you.
Yeah. Wow.
So Sharada Devi is one such song that we heard in the Gigi Pada realm, and this form itself is a very interesting form because it's a secular format. You have Muslim teams battle against Gypsy teams like Lamani teams and Lamani teams with SC teams, and so different communities come with their gods and they kind of battle it out. Of course, battles do get dirty and they would just get downright. Anki harita, nina siri jagta, I will tear your sari, I will tear your blouse, I will tear your dhoti. I mean, all that
Wow.
the songs. And the men just I think I'm being partial, Akila. The men generally just get dirty pretty quickly. Yeah. So say for example, the lady will look at the boys team, and also so there is one person playing this in the Gigi Pada team, then one person is playing the duff. Usually the singer has the duffly with them. Dung tak dung tak dung dung tak.
Yeah.
That's like, I've passed the sawal to you, now answer me, you know.
Yeah.
Then there is that duff, and there is this, and then there's one person with a challam tala. Yeah. And that is some very level challam. There is chak 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 chak.
I know, totally. Yeah.
Like they go on, it's really, really trippy. And what they'll be doing is they'll also be doing it in the opponent's face. You know, he'll be showing him his bum, and then he'll be just like jumping in front of him, and they're egging each other on.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there is the woman saying, he will say, "Shanavandu gandananti ninna utti." There's all sorts of bad words. Okay.
I know.
What are we going to do? Shanavandu gandananti ninna utti. Bare nanna bhangara gunavanti. You who say men and women are equal, come, my bhangari, come, I'll show you. ಹೆಣ್ಣವೊಂದು ಗಂಡನ ತಿನ್ನಿನವತಿ ಬಾರೆ ನನ್ನ ಬಂಗಾರ ಗುಣವಂತಿ ಓ ಬಾರೆ ನನ್ನ ಬಂಗಾರ ಗುಣವಂತಿ
OMG.
ಕಂಡವರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಭಾನುವಾರ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಿ ನೀ ಅಂತ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಗಾರತಿ ಅಗಿ 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 he's like you out of people who has shown many men what a good Sunday is.
Yeah.
You who have shown what a good Sunday is to random men, you are going to answer me. Come, ask me questions.
Wow.
So she says, ಮಂದಿರ ನೋಡಿ ಹಾಕ್ಬ್ಯಾಡೋ ಬೋಳ ಲಂಗೋಟಿ ಬೋಳ ಲಂಗೋಟಿ Don't wear your underwear just because you're in front of the temple. ಕ್ವಾಡಗ ನಂಗ ಮಾಡಬ್ಯಾಡೋ ಬರೀ ಲೂಟಿ Don't play for the sake of winning. ಕ್ವಾಡಗ ನಂಗ ಮಾಡಬ್ಯಾಡೋ ಬರೀ ಲೂಟಿ ಬರೀ ಲೂಟಿ ಮಂದಿರ ನೋಡಿ ಹಾಕ್ಬ್ಯಾಡೋ ಬೋಳ ಲಂಗೋಟಿ ಬೋಳ ಲಂಗೋಟಿ Languti means not even underwear. It's like that langot.
Yeah, literally.
Wear your langot just because you're turning up to the temple. And don't fight and don't loot just for the sake of winning. Like, make your point a little more sensibly. Like, I love these battles. We could sit for hours.
Yeah.
And each response takes about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And what happens is the gods who enter this battle, right? Even the really demure ones turn fierce. Like Renuka, she is like a dukhyari mahila. She's like, oh son, please take me back. Oh my husband, I love you. Please take me back. She's constantly doing this. In the play, in Yalamanata, the approach that we are looking at this, and you see it. It's a trope in Hindi cinema. Abla maa, roti hui aati hai. Amitabh Bachchan se baat
I know
karne ke.
exactly.
That's that kind of. So you have that play out. But what happens in Gigi Pada is because everyone's battling. So gods also need to get. So Renuka then she kind of doesn't say, son, why don't you, please don't kill me. Instead she says, Parshurama ninna moti atursbeda nee bandi nanna uchi helaga giyaga. Parshurama, don't upturn your mustache and walk around. You've forgotten you've come in my shit and piss.
Man,
You
like,
cannot- let me remind you, don't show me your attitude.
wow.
So
Yeah.
that insane, right? Like that's insane because you got a personality that's changing, like avatars based on the form.
No,
You
Shilpa, what about patriarchy in this? Yeah, the women seem like
Killed.
I know, amazing, huh?
Yeah, she says, you are so confident walking around upturning your mustache. Why shouldn't I walk around bare-breasted showing my tits? She
Yeah.
says. So I was thinking, now this is insane, right? We keep imagining an India where there is a village where the women have no voices, and there are performances that have existed for hundreds of years that have done just this.
Yeah.
Just constantly question and break these notions, and you get one battle after the other, which is basically doing just that. I too am good. I'm way better than you. Watch it. Instead
No,
of,
and here we are like educated women struggling to like smash patriarchy, right? Like, it's such a
Right.
joke.
Right?
Yeah. Fantastic, really.
Liberating. Like, I'm thinking, what is there for me to sit and wait for someone of my background coming from Mount Carmel College or Sophia High School and then going and studying abroad? What am I waiting for? A script coming from our generation. Everything
Correct.
that needs to be said is already there. The
Already
material is updated.
exists.
Run the updates, keep running the updates. And how do you update it? You practice it. You don't try
Yeah,
and
that's
put
the thing.
you don't try, like, you will see these museums in Karnataka. Idu, this is a grinding stone. No, it's not a grinding stone. It's not grinding anything anymore. You
Yeah.
dropped it in a glass box. Of course, it's
Yeah.
not a grinding.
Right.
It's acrylic. And it's not
Yeah.
being put to use, or you can't even imagine it being put to use if one more generation passes. Some kid's going to see it and say, what a waste of rock.
Yeah.
My mom
I mean,
better with the
yeah.
kitchen
So,
counter.
Yeah, so continuity is crucial, and you're saying continuity through actually living that experience and practicing it is the best way to
Exactly.
sort of keep it alive,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Not just songs, it's not just theater, it's every aspect of it, right? What do you eat? Where did it come from? What did we eat 3 generations ago? What was our body type living off of for generations before this? And how can you actually go back to introducing that food, the making of that food, how people had to sing all night to keep that harvest, the person who's harvesting with his bulls going, all of that meant food, not a trip to the supermarket or a call to Swiggy or Zomato. It's, you know, if you can break that connection and if you can renew that connection with your food, with how we, what we curate our, what we curate to our children. Is it only the education that we give them? It's the international school that we struggle to pay the fee for. Is it just that, or is it actually you realizing that you have left something behind within your ancestry? After they were agrarian, then you moved to the city, something else happened, but then how do you connect back? How do you, as a past, that we are people who come from gold, we come from bangles, we come from leather, we come from pottery, we come from wood. This is, it's a part of our DNA, it's a part of our cultural DNA. So how do you curate your children? How do you keep them if not fascinated, how do you keep them informed? It's like, as children we heard Mahabharata or Ramayana, and we keep reliving some part of it, and then suddenly we trigger back to the Mahabharata or Ramayana. That myth becomes new every time you've grown up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something that folk does for you as well. You have to introduce. We have children growing up singing "Rain, Rain, Go Away" in a country that's agrarian. It's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
Why can't we introduce them to the idea that we are a country that used to pray for rain to come? We used to symbolize a Maleraya, a rain man, and we used to make him out of wet mud. We used to keep him wet as long as possible so that he realizes he'll be well taken care of and he'll pour. There are people, there are frogs that are married off to each other so that the rain can come for the wedding.
Told me that, yeah.
And if you look at where these rituals happen, it will tell you historically where have been our dry lands. And when you see a dry land and it doesn't have these rituals, it's not been dry for very long, has it? Gangama or Kavirama didn't turn up there because she was not needed there for the longest time.
Right.
But in some place, and now there is a dam that is built, there is a full bore, and like water is like spilling all over the place. But still they will continue to pray to Gangama. And then you have to look back as to, okay, Gangama is here. So technically we have water now, but there were several generations that knew the value of water. Now we're spilling it, everyone's digging in and putting in a straw and making one bore to the underground water supply. But before, if you did anything like that, you would have to sacrifice a goat. For that matter, a dam would require a human sacrifice. You see that, I think, Rajnikant's one of those films was about this. I forget which one.
The more recent one, right?
Yeah, not very recent also. After Baba and after,
was it Kala?
No. Kala is very, very recent. Slightly before that. There's the Tamil film I remember of Rajnikant that speaks about this.
Turn on comments. Somebody will.
When we hold water, when we hold back water from it flowing away to its natural source or to Kaveri or to Ganga or for that water to join somewhere, then we pay a price. Generally, we've created myths to say, "New bali kodabeku." You have to give sacrifice. Remember, you made a sacrifice to get this water and hold it, because water is sottu. You cannot hold water. Now we'll dig a bore and then we'll do Gangama Puja just to please her. Like upset, So quite often the rituals that we practice also become namesake, which become just symbolic. We don't imbibe them, we don't embody them. So I stopped practicing most rituals that my family was practicing, also because I realized over time they were embarrassed of their Matangi, and hence that's why she turned into a Lakshmi. As you come up the class status, you want to leave your gods behind you because your gods tell people who you are. And if you're someone who's running away from your caste identity, that's the first thing that goes. So when I lived in Australia, I ate my fill of beef. I love beef, and then I'd come back and I'd tell Ajji, Australian beef is cholo da. He'll buy a guitar. If you put it in your mouth, it melts and it goes. It's so amazing. And she'll be like, yeah, yeah. You can totally see her mouth watering. But then she'll turn around and she'll say, but don't tell people outside anymore. We've stopped eating all those things. Because you've conditioned that old woman to believe that her standing is lower because she eats beef. And that's what you need to constantly destruct. That's one of the things that I realized being in this field. I don't want to be in the business of creation. I rather be in the business of destroying things that are not required.
Yeah.
There's so
absolutely.
much that's really wonky and it doesn't suit us or our time or our contemporary ideologies and the way we want to live, what our future, what we plan for our children it should be. It doesn't match that. So hence, instead of making it fusion and coloring it up and singing it in a new fashion and saying, wow, that new folk number is amazing, question it. Question what it's trying to say and why you are not okay with it. And feel the right to change it. And that you gain by practicing, being with the practitioners and saying, teach me, I want to be your student. Give them the same respect and dignity that you would give to a professional artist.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
A classical artist who comes from some, lineage of many schools and our culture, this guru from this guru. There are hundreds of us who are nameless within the folk.
Yeah.
And better that way, I feel. Whatever information needed to go in, it went into the song. The place had to go in, it went in. One amazing joke they came in, she went into the song. So if you want information, add it to the song. We don't need to say this. It's of course there is a certain school that we need to say this is the teacher, this is the raga, this is okay. But there is also a realm within folk where you are in charge of the entire grammar. You want to be
agency.
Agency you will not find in any other form as far as I can see.
Yeah. So I'm taking away two things, Shilpa, from this thing about inserting yourself in the narrative and also having the agency to sort of make it your own.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Shilpa, I want to ask you a little bit about life in Gulbarga. You told me that you moved from Bangalore to live in Gulbarga. What sort of triggered that decision and how has life been treating you? Like, what have been some of the interesting experiences you've had so far?
I love this town, but we came here and then I realized, I've never lived in this town for more than 10 days. What was I thinking? Why we decided to move here was mainly, we lived in the city in Coxtown. It's a really nice part of town and it's one of the most secular parts of town. Like you have Christmas and Ramzan and Mother Mary's feast. Everything happens on that street. So I loved that place. It was very hard to move away from there. But mainly why we moved is to be able to we didn't mind being the bridge from the urban space to the folk space. We didn't mind, but the drive used to kill us. It used to damage our car quite a bit as well. It was a good 600 kilometers sometimes, 700 kilometers sometimes, just to get to a space. And also, I think the inability to bring them over to Bangalore and make them feel at home, just like the way they did for us. Any town, any village we went to, they would open their homes, they will give you their bed to sleep on, they will give you all the hot food and wait for you to finish before start eating. So they're so nice. It's just like, that is not even in our culture, especially people in the village who have farms and that right that they had to share their food, the power that they had to be able to say, okay, I have an extra plate. Here, if you turn up home, I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't.
Oh my God, like, why didn't you let me know?
Yeah, why didn't you tell me? I don't know what to cook for you. Can we order? Like, is that going to be fine? Now, Gulbarga, that's one thing that's changed. I mean, you can't really order food quite often. There are not those many options as Chennai or Bangalore. Or Pondi also for that matter. Pondi had very few choices to start with. Here there are fewer. But what's interesting is it's a town which is like Pondi, very varied. It's divided, but at the same time the history is very layered and quite edgy in some places. So you have the Sufi belt, this heart of India, right? This used to be a Muslim belt. So most of the art forms, if they flourished, it's because these kings were generous. They paid for the music, they paid for the musicians. If Giripada exists, it's because of the Adil Shahis and the Nizams. So you see this entire middle region is what we call Hyderabad region. Yeah, and it stretched from one coast to another at some point till Operation Polo happened, and people went berserk, and political things happened to kind of kill this heart of Islamic culture in this region. But within this region, also some other movement took place, which is called the Veerashaiva movement. It's the Vachana belt. So a lot of people came out and had their own bhakti movement in this region.
Yeah.
And it's very much like the Sufi movement as well. So there are two different kinds of bhakti movements that come and merge in this region.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of Lingayat institutions, lots of vachanas, lots of bhajans, and you'll find so many artists here. There's no dearth of art. And also you have this region where I could have beef biryani whenever I felt like, and I did not have to worry about, oh my God, I hope the cops don't turn up. Like in Bombay, literally, they don't put it up on the boards at all. I remember when we were younger as actors, we used to hang out after a play in Prithvi or something. We'd go and hang around. And in late night, there would be places where you could have a beef sheik or something like that. But you wouldn't put it on the board. Like you'd have to like hush ask them. In Gulbarga, it's not the case. Like you can just walk up to the shop and like eat on the street. And so I found that extremely
liberating. Yeah.
Said that, I'm a Bangalore girl, so we also had ladies' night and going out and drinking with the girls, and I think all that went away, and I miss that sometimes to have access to my girls and my girl time. And so something that I'm going to miss, but I'm hoping I can create like a yearly ritual of having everyone over, like how we do for Thanksgiving or Easter, but we can have it over for Dasara or Yalamasi or like a harvest festival where I want to share that joy of being able to say,
let them participate in.
I want to harvest this grain. I want my friends to come and help me harvest this grain, and then we'll make a big meal and we'll eat it. And that is us returning back to our folk roots. Being more in control of what we grow and where we shit and what we do with it. In the city, you can't stop using your toilet. You're going to still have people manual scavenging, going down and fixing your pipes and dying doing it. So it was a utopia that I had in my head, that I will build a space someday where I will know what to do with my shit and not have someone else have to take care of it. No matter how much tax I pay, I don't think I can get over the guilt of people dying because I have to fix the pipes. Yeah, so I think that's also one thing that made us move, and we realized we would have to sell both our kidneys if we had to buy Bangalore. So we were far away when my dad had bought property here in Gulbarga long ago, and as soon as we saw this piece of property, we said, okay, this is it. It was out of the town and not a soul around, lots of peacocks, lots of rabbits and just random animals, just about lots of birds. So we thought, I think this is the kind of place we want to be, where we can grow trees, we can create a food forest, and if there's a lockdown, we don't necessarily have to do just relief. We can just fill up our trucks and go home and have everyone work and feed ourselves. A place of refuge, if not anything else. So it's only been the lockdown. It's been a year since we moved here, so it's been on and off with the lockdown. I also realized big difference was that in Bangalore, I could go to an institution and say, I will do workshop for your children, or I would like a hall. It's not, everything I do is pseudoscience to people here. I don't have a degree, or I don't have a PhD to show for what I've done. So they're like, she's so lovely. She's a celebrity. We love her. And then I'll be like, will you be paying? And they'll be like, no, we don't. So I'm like, okay, so maybe I have to do online work now then. So I do work with the kids here because they're so refreshing. That's one thing that's really changed. Is I had a lot of students in Bangalore who would come on and off and they'd pick up music, but they're city children. And for them to pick up this accent, this music, and start playing the Shruti, Chaudki, it takes some time. But the kids here, all they had to do is know what I'm doing. And they'll start singing, and they're better than me. They have such good connection with their own families and their own roots. So then in a minute. They're so much better. So I feel like I want to hang back and put together like a folk choir of kids who know their songs. They come together and they curate their music and what it means, you know. So I have this dream that I will put together a place and have a repertory of kids who will come in and out, who will bring their music, who will share, who will be a part of a larger exchange with kids in the city, make music with them. And I will just grow old, like growing my radish and like spinach or something.
That sounds actually exciting. Shilpa, like I said, I can't wait to visit you in Gulbarga and like really like, yeah. I have one question. Of course, like Kirtana Ravi says, you've been like her, girl crush in school. And Vaishnavi Sushila says you're her crush right now. So, well, so many compliments. But like, yeah, but Shilpa, Kirtana has a question and she says, what is your take on the statement that caste is culture?
It's a tricky one. I wouldn't say caste is culture, but each caste has its own culture. And because of how we might not agree that reservations exist for a good reason, there are a lot of discussions that divide us when it comes to caste. But if you look at caste through the cultural lens, you will realize how we're all connected through this culture, like having an Ur Habba. There is no untouchability on that day. Everyone eats from the same space, and even if there was some sort of discrimination that happened, it's a good time for us to realize today, in today's day and age, we can change those practices by being actively the decision makers of such things. So I just think caste doesn't necessarily mean culture, but every caste has a culture that needs to be reckoned with. A person who is upper caste might find it easier to say, yes, I'm Brahmin and I know this Vedic chant and this has come from my family and my tata used to make me say it. I still say it and feel pride in that. I want the same pride that for my grandmom to have that. We ate beef back then because really that was the only meat that was allowed. But your grandfather made excellent instruments out of the same cow that died and then we had food from. I mean, there's got to be that kind of acceptance of who we are, even though when we the ladder to say this is my community, I stand with them in one way or the other. Otherwise, I think within the lower caste, I see my dad and his generation, their whole idea was we have to keep our children far away from caste. We have to take them out of this. We have to send them abroad and they have to study there and hopefully find husbands there and stay there and have happily ever after. You know, they don't need to come here and they don't need to deal with the muck that we had to. They don't be thrown out of offices because even though I'm an IS officer, I was asked to, they have traumas that only they can understand. But second, even as a generation that didn't feel that, you have the burden of that second hand.
Yeah.
And you don't want to turn away from that. When you realize that your father got thrown out for the reason that he was lowly born, then you're like, no, I'm actually going to assert it. There is no way I'm going to hide it. I think that is something that I walk through this work as well. I remember when Vemula committed suicide and there was a nationwide uproar amongst the student community. I think I started slowly waking up to know I want to understand my community and the Dalit identity better. Because right now it's also being politically used for certain things. And we need to realize who makes us pawns for what. And I think that awareness also comes with you going back to your community and asserting and claiming and reclaiming and owning your history. And Renuka has done that for me. My dad had like this aversion to seeing me because in their family, within the Mahadiga families, poor households have given their women up to become Devdasis. So when my dad saw me with a Shruti and Chaudhary, he's like, what is happening? Why do you have to do this? Why do you have to drag us all down with you? I'm like, that's exactly why we have to reclaim it. That's exactly why we have to reclaim it. Today, if you see the pare or the tamate or the haligi, it's all the same instrument. In South India, we all, each of the states have this instrument. It's for birth and death. Today, it's also for protests. Be it the casteless collective, we've reclaimed it in a way that it's become it's an extension of our collective voice. And that's what we need to do with our older instruments. This instrument, she is like the most forgiving instrument you can think of. Pot, she'll break and you'll fix her with a little bit of rice in no time.
Wow.
That's the beauty of it. All of our root instruments came from one string, one piece of leather, one string, one something, two rocks. Um, Even if it's simple, it reaches people when we sing with these instruments because it's in all our histories. We
Beautiful.
all come from that space, and hence you cannot not connect to it. So the idea is, I stopped thinking of myself as a performer. I started thinking, can we just give up this idea of I have to perform and hence I'm an artist? My grandmom doesn't call herself an artist. She knows so many more songs than me. She has sung through our childhood and my father's childhood and the harvests of that region. I think the Mud harvests in that village for several years have so much to owe to my grandmother. And I don't know how many people got fed with that food. But her tunes, her music, her friends, and their loud voices kept so many farmers awake for so many years.
Yes.
And I think if that is enough to know that your performance creates life, helps life being created, sustained, shouldn't that be enough? Can we create that kind of study of music, which is more inbuilt into your life? Can we teach aunties to sing those same grinding songs on the mixer?
Yeah.
Okay, grinding stone, but now we have to do something with those songs, otherwise they'll just
Fade away, right? Yeah, absolutely. It was so beautiful, Shilpa. I just have one question from Vibha, and she says, "Kolana kola." This phrase is used in folk music. Which area or place is it? Did I pronounce it right?
Kolanna kole, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are kolata is a gendered thing. So if you look at Chitradurga, which is in the heart of Karnataka, there's again kolata in Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, in all states. Again, we have different versions of it. In Chitradurga, it's about maths and economics and tradesman language and poems that are punctuated with the stick, and some funky formations happen, and usually the older men in the region kind of do it. You have women kolata again in some parts of Karnataka, but honestly the most visible kolata is what city kids do in the name of kolata. Lipstick, flowers, 2 sticks, checked sari. Checked sari, folk. Then there'll be one kolata song and they will sing again and again. But we've really forgotten why we play kolata. I think it's different for each of our communities. Like I've seen this one particular group of men in Chitradurga do it, and they're talking about the economics, how much rain came, who lost, how. So it's actually it's like singing the blues, but you're doing it with kolu. Like what happened to your business? What happened to your business?
Yeah.
It's all happened to. So I think kolata has different function in different places. There are a lot of versions of kolata in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu and Kerala and Andhra Pradesh, but different communities practice it differently. A lot of times it's linked, all of these group activities, right? Like kolata, like the Lamani dances. They're about people coming together and sustaining that energy. Because if you have 500 people come together, boredom is sure to kind of strike somewhere and then spread like a disease to the rest. So that's why you have these overnight plays. All my relatives have come. Instead of them sitting and bitching about my daughter who might run away with that next door boy, why don't we do the play all night? Let's cut down the gossip. Let's do the play all night. So quite often it's functional and it's practical. It's about keeping people together. And you convince people that every time you watch it, if you complete it fully, you will get punya. That's the only thing the artist is doing, mind you, is convincing you that if you watch this story fully, you're going to get goodwill. But ultimately, the artist doesn't assert himself as much as we do in theatre. In proscenium, we are telling audience, you have to keep your mouth shut, you have to shut your phone, I'll put you in darkness, you can't see anybody, now watch me. Yeah, that's what I want you to do. But when you watch, people in my village watch the play, there will be some child taking a shit, her mom will decide to wash her bum there only, and then there'll be a woman right next to her, she's having a possession. The woman next to her, she's saying, can you calm it? Like, that woman hasn't given me betel nut. Like, where is my betel nut? Like, I really need to fix my pan fixes. I'm talking for a pun. Happening, and the artist is not like, how dare you not listen to me, I'm going to take a break. He will take a break when he forgets his lines or he feels like he's getting tired, and okay, someone get tea and get me a BD, and I'm going to go in my costume, being Renuka, only go have a smoke and then come back.
So much autonomy,
so much
Unbelievable.
so much to a point that we as city audience, if we go and sit there, no, if you don't have the right mindset, you'll just get irritated thinking that these people are ruining my experience of it. But you fail to understand that you are a part of that experience.
That experience, yeah.
Everything around you is a part of that experience as well.
Yeah.
So your art and life is separate, and hence you're trying to watch it like that, and hence you're getting irritated. It's nobody's fault.
No, that's so beautifully said. Maybe you should have this large, like this girls gang that you're going to have at Gulbarga. You should probably make it a larger gang and have all of us there. So we all just get to kind of sample this and really become a little more sensitive and I don't know, just so many beautiful things that you've said, Shilpa. There's just one request from Vaishnavi. So Sheila, she says, Nij Nij Re Bala. Could you...
This is a Marathi lullaby my Ajji used to sing. Ajji comes from Raipalli. Raipalli is, it's also called Gadi Raipalli, boundary Raipalli. It's bang on the boundary. So people that don't really know whether they're in Maharashtra, at least when we were younger, we'd go and ask some random Ajjas, and then like, we don't know where we are, whether we were in Maharashtra or Karnataka. We speak both, so it doesn't matter to us.
Yeah.
So she comes from a place where all her childhood songs are all Marathi, because she came from a Marathi town. And when she grew up, all her Shrimanta, Sobane, that's your puberty songs, your first night songs, all of those songs are in Kannada, because she came here and then
moved borders. Yeah.
This is Nija Nija Re Bala. I'll translate as I go. निज निज रे बाळा झोक देत म्या तुझला निज निज रे बाळा झोक देत म्या तुझला झोक देत हात माझा दुखला जो जो झोक देत हात माझा दुखला जो जो. It means sleep, sleep, child. निज निज रे बाळा झोक देत म्या तुझला. I'm going to rock you to sleep, my baby. But rocking you to sleep, my hands are hurting. Please go to sleep. कोण्या पाप्याची दृष्ट झाली ग बाई, कोण्या पाप्याची दृष्ट झाली ग बाई, बाळ माझं खलपिलं नाही जो जो, बाळ माझं खलपिलं नाही जो जो. Some evil eyes have been cast upon my baby. Some papi. Kunya papyaji. Someone has cast some evil eyes on my baby, and that's why I think he's not eating or drinking. Sutara nirgundi karagir anavila. Sutara nirgundi karagir anavila. Rangit palna vanagila zo zo. A sutar has come, a carpenter has come from this faraway town called Nirgundi. So I'm going to ask him to make a colorful cradle for my baby. Rangita palna banagila zo zo.
So beautiful.
Chari bazala chimnya mor kadhila. Chari bazala chimnya mor kadhila. मदितान्य वाळना निजविला जो जो, मदितान्य वाळना निजविला जो जो. Chari Bazala, all four sides of this cradle, I've asked him to make sparrows and peacocks, so it will keep my company, keep my baby company while I put it to sleep amidst the sparrows and peacocks. So this was Nija Nija Re Bala. It's a very
beautiful
song. It's like a family treasure, so to speak. I put this up as one of the first songs last year when the lockdown started, and suddenly I had a lot of Marathi audience and people from Pune writing to me saying that, can you please sing it for my child, or send me a recording of this song. So I was surprised. Generally, even though the music it's in a language that I don't speak, only it's the memory of how Ajji speaks it that made me connect with the song. Probably if I'd heard it in a film, it wouldn't have been that effective. Just generally when you are somehow physically, through your memories, through something connected to the music that you sing, it just really, I feel like it radiates more somehow. I can't explain it. Like I feel it, that it's constantly, it's the music that I have picked up in the last few years that have really internalized. Some way I felt like, yes, I can embody the themes of this piece that have really radiated a lot. And the rest of them, I've sung it, and if they've become popular, I get very irritated. Like I sang this song called Bagila Mundaram Gole. This is a typical folk song from not too many years ago. You can tell, because it's all about the sob story of a woman whose mother has passed away, and hence she doesn't really have any home anymore. And I sang it because my grandmom comes from that time. You know, she loves this catharsis in the music of women are alone and we are like thorn bushes.
Right, right.
So I sang it because I liked the tune, and then it became really popular, and then I really started having a problem with why I sang it. You know,
Yeah.
like maybe I should have changed the words. I'm really not liking how popular it's become and how often I get asked to sing this song. I feel like
But Shilpa, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Like how Janaki says, your voice is mesmerizing and powerful at the same time. So thank you so much for the so many stories that you shared with us, so much music that you shared with us, and for all that you do, for being also giving us hope that it's possible for us urbanites to really uh, not just be superficial about the way we speak about or connect with or pretend to connect with folk tradition and culture, but actually like live it as a living breathing experience and actually continue its legacy by actually practicing it, by curating it for our children, and for becoming more sensitive, and by really like you rightly said, contextualizing it, right? So I think there are so many beautiful takeaways from this conversation. Puna Anish, Anish, we're going to bring in Shilpa and do a concert with her very soon. And she'll take all your requests, but I have to let her go because I know it's already 10:20 and I've taken, but thank you so much to everybody who watched and who, stayed attentively and sent us so much love. Thank you so much, Shilpa. Clearly, you have so many fans and obviously like touching so many lives. And like I said, really a symbol of hope. So thank you so much. And I hope to stay in touch and we'll talk about our concert soon.
Yeah, and when you're going to turn up to Gulbarga, yeah, you should tell
Yes,
me that.
100%. I said no, like also that I want a jolad roti.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you're going from there, you can take kati roti and go. You know, that dry version of it.
Yeah.
And like that Bangalore roti, you can keep making whatever sambar and breaking and putting it in and eating it.
Oh, fantastic.
Just make on that for the rest of the day.
Looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Shilpa. And thank you, Kirtana, Janki. So many familiar faces Kavita, people who joined and who, Vaishnavi. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Really. And Shilpa, it's going to be really hard for me to sleep tonight because I'm so wired right now. I think I'm up for one of those plays, all-nighters.
Oh my God, what a missed, yeah, really. I'm hoping at least once a year we bring in these overnight performances because it's really something to do, you know. You'll be falling asleep, you really want to know how this Renuka is going to react by the time she's headed. It's 3 in the morning, you're like, hurry up. And they'll be like, I want to take a BD break. Oh no, someone get me a whiskey or something.
But I think the biggest takeaway is how bloody cool these women are. And I really, really feel so terrible that we are still I don't know, struggling to
the right words. We're trying to be politically correct. It's just
Totally, yeah. Curating content for social media, saying it in the most, because we're so scared we'll get trolled otherwise.
I know. But we
Crazy.
do. I mean, why I stopped most of my online work was I started getting trolled big time. Huh? I used to be told that you're shameless, you're taking somebody else's art form and you're appropriating it and you're making money and fame out of somebody else's work. You don't wear folk costume. Why? Why are you speaking English at all? Why are you speaking in another language? Why can't you just stick to Kannada?
Yeah.
And this is common across the country now. You hate on English, you hate on Hindi, you hate on Kannada, you hate on something, to push your agenda. So that was quite irritating. So I felt this year I've just been doing this, having conversations with like-minded people and just spreading the word, saying that I have a place and now I've isolated myself. Now y'all have to come and get me.
You bet we are going to. Be ready for that all-night girls party.
Yeah.
In Gulbarga. Yeah. Fantastic. Lovely, Shilpa. Thank you so much. I mean, if this was not an Instagram live conversation, I could keep talking to you. But this is an Insta live conversation and there are other people and it's a collective experience. So I have to let you go and say thank you to everybody and have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Guys, good night.
Bye.
Bye.